Well, hello, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are, welcome. My name is Chauncey. I am a national presenter for Faith Life, the company who makes Logos Bible software. And I'd like to welcome you to the next, I guess you can say, episode of Women in the Word. And this is a webinar that we started a couple of months ago, I guess, where we give women an opportunity to showcase their ministry, their journey, any books they're working on, any speaking engagements, and just share a word from the Lord in terms of their journey, how they came to faith, and also talk about how they study the Bible, because obviously they wouldn't be women in the Word without studying the Bible. And so we want to hear from them in terms of what they do on a day-to-day basis, maybe some of their favorite tools. And it's just been a blessing. I'm not going to prolong it anymore. I want to jump right on in with today's guest. And today's guest is, they're all special, but this one's even a little more special because he's a personal friend of mine. Named Kennisha Moffett. Kennisha Moffett, what's up?
Hey, Joe, I was struggling. I was like, do I call him Joe or do I call him Chauncey? I don't
want to see, some people don't even know that. A lot of people call me Joe. Either one you can remember. That's fine.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for this. It is a huge honor and definitely much easier since it is you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this because, again, we know each other, and so it makes it a little bit easier. And but before we jump in anything, you know how we do. We start out with a icebreaker question, and okay. Kennisha has no idea what the question is.
Nope.
So it's either a first or a favorite. And so I have a special question that came to mind this morning for Kennisha.
Oh boy.
A random question, no reason to it. And so we're going to go with this. It's a first question. So we want to know, the world, Kennisha Moffett wants to know, who was your first celebrity crush as a kid?
Oh, you don't want me to talk about that.
Who was it? Michael Jackson?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I would say my very first celebrity crush, and this is nowhere near holy, and I don't suggest anyone adopt it. And I did get in much trouble because my parents were not with it. But I loved Prince.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I remember coming home and putting his posters up on the wall. I was in the 5th grade, and my daddy came in and ripped them all down. It's like, you don't understand what he's doing.
Wait a minute, celebrity, boots, makeup, and all, huh? You were really? Wow.
I thought the music was amazing. Yeah, but I hadn't even all of that was Prince wasn't registering in my 5th grade mind. It was just the music. Yeah, but my daddy was like, nah, we're not doing that.
See, I know your husband Herbert very well, but if it hadn't worked out with Herbert and you and Prince, you could have shared makeup. It could have been a
he's too short, Chauncey. He was a midget compared to tall women. Yeah.
Wow. So now we know that first celebrity crush. So you went from Prince to Herbert Moffett. All right. I think that was an upgrade.
That was a true upgrade, and Herbert's tall. And
he's tall too. There you go.
And a musician, as you know. So that was part of the crush.
There you go. All right, well, good. So mine, I was thinking about this too, and I was like, man, if I was asked that question, what would I say? You know what I would say would be, you remember Good Times? I would probably say Thelma with Good Times.
What?
Yeah, Thelma. Come on now, all the guys like Thelma with Good Time. That she was the one. But anyway, this is not about me. This is about you.
Oh my God.
Well, look. When I first contacted you about being on a webinar, you didn't even hesitate. You're like, yeah, I'm in, I want to do it. So when you heard about it, what made you want to participate and share your story and share some information?
Well, honestly, you have a golden ticket to the Moffett house. we tend to say yes to whatever you ask. But on top of that, I really appreciated the honor of it. I appreciate the timing of it because I do feel like we're in a time where women are being honored for their contribution in the Bible. We're there from the beginning all the way to the end, positively and negatively. I am one who believes in the biblical role of women. I love being a wife. I love being a mama, but I also love that God has sought fit to use me beyond those two roles. And I think it's just wonderful that you are advocating for women in the Bible. But I love it too, because it's so authentic to who we know you to be. You know, you're not just advocating for your sisters like me, but you do this with your queen and your princess in your house. You push them and you promote them. And so, of course, and I feel like it's in line with what God is doing in the earth, even though there's a false version of it. The feminist movement is a false version of this.
Mhm.
The real honor of godly women who live to serve the Lord. And as such, we leave a legacy of good things for our family and our communities. And I thank God that you're advocating for those women.
Well, thank you. You know, and as I told you, and thank you for saying that. And I told you, and I told Herbert, I said, when we thought about this, I got to call Kennisha, got to get you up here. And you guys are like, hey, you know, I'm on it. And I appreciate that, because one of the reasons behind all of this is, I mean, there are many, but one of them is you have women who listen to various podcasts, they read a bunch of books, which is great. And then sometimes they just kind of get stuck in terms of where do I go? You know, how does someone else that's in my similar situation, how do they study the Bible? You know, I may be struggling with this or that. And the prayer is that throughout the course of these webinars, in particular today, that someone hears something that resonates with them and that they can take it and use it and run with it, whether or not that's some tips or advice, you know, your life experience. And we're going to get all into that may be a blessing to someone else. So with that said, let's kind of jump into kind of like your story, your journey. I mean, were you like, you know, a Christian in elementary school all the way to now, or was there some, and she laughed, or was some life-changing situation that how'd you come to the Lord? Let's ask it that way.
Great question. I was born into a very rich Christian heritage. My grandparents were believers. My great-grandparents were believers. I'm from one of those families that when we gathered, somebody had a song, somebody had a scripture, and then we had an uncle or granddaddy who prayed for an hour over every meal. And I remember when I was about 9, my great-grandmother stood up one year at Christmas and said she had talked to the Lord and she was leaving. And she wanted us to know that in the next 2 weeks, she was going to be in heaven. And so we need to get all our love. She blessed every single one of us. And then the next year, my grandfather, he was passing. And 2 years later, I was 11. And he called us all to his home. He and my grandmother laid hands on all of us, told us the same thing. He had a conversation with God and he was going home. And so they made a huge impression on my life. My earliest remembrance of praying was with my grandmother. She taught me how to pray, which is why I was laughing when you said kindergarten, because in kindergarten, I was praying. I was praying and I knew how to pray and I loved praying. My grandparents had 8 children, and you know, out of 8 children, you're bound to have some prodigals. Mm-hmm. And so 3 of them were prodigals. My mama was one of them, the baby of the 8. So she was the baby and the prodigal. And I was born in her rebellious season. And so my life at home didn't mirror my budding relationship with God, or what I was seeing in the rest of my family. So it was very strange for me. But my grandmother's prayers did something for my ability to understand. Mm-hmm. And even as a kid, I had this ability to understand. And so I would go to church because she put us on the bus, even though she was going through stuff. And in Dallas, we went to Golden Gate Missionary Baptist Church. And this was at the time where there was about 60 deacons, 12 pastors, but every Sunday morning when we would arrive at church, the deacons were hosting prayer. And then every day at the end of service, the pastor called for altar prayer. And Chauncey, I was a kid, but I remember laying on my face with a sea of adults praying for my mama.
Wow.
And so when I turned 11, it happened to be a Sunday. She was at church. I didn't know she was coming that Sunday. And she didn't know I was going to give my life to the Lord that Sunday, but God knew. And what I would do is I would sneak out of children's church. And I would go over to the adult church and sit in the back. And sometimes Brother Clark would come find me and drag me back. But this particular Sunday, he didn't. And so when they called for the altar call, I walked down. I just got up. Everything could hear God saying, give yourself to me. And so I walked down, I'm 11 and I'm crying. I don't know anything. I just know that I have to do this. And so I did. And then 2 years later, my youth pastor asked me to do this performance where I pretended to be the woman with the issue of blood, touching Jesus's hem of his garment. And something happened in both of those experiences that was bigger than me, but I understood my life had more purpose than what I was living. And so God did deliver my family. He let me see it. And shortly after that, I was a sophomore at Baylor. I had started going through my rebellious season and got into some really hard, tough failure on my part. And it was at that point that God went from being the father that I never had, who was taking me through these traumatic experiences at home, into the Lord that I needed, that I could truly serve and follow. And that happened my junior year at Baylor. And so that is the life I've been living now. And I got to tell you, he has redeemed it all. And he has made the pain that I experienced worth something, because now I get to help other people navigate these tough family situations and give the compassion that I feel like my mama should have gotten in that season from believers who didn't know how to help her.
Wow, that's encouraging. And I didn't know all of that story. I knew some of it, but that's really encouraging as we look at, women and men too, who, maybe going through a tough season or a rebellious period. I mean, I think we all do, go through that period where we think we know everything and we don't.
We've talked about this because we have kids now.
Yeah, exactly. And then we realize, okay, I was so dumb,
Yeah.
Point at some point. And that's what the Lord saying, you really were dumb, but you didn't know it. But
and it is different for God to be your father if you've never had a father than him as Lord, because Lord is, I live to follow and serve, and it's no longer about me. And I thank God for the distinction, because I really did need a father in the season that he called me. And so that he gave me a lot of time of bumping my head.
Well, you mentioned how the Lord just redeemed everything and changed, and how you help couples and people that are going through situations. And I know, when we first met, just your spirit and Herbert's as well was just a welcoming spirit. And I can just see how the Lord uses you and Herbert as well, and you guys as ministry. And as a matter of fact, I'll just tell this story briefly of how we met. So Kennisha's daughter, Jade, went to Baylor. My son Cameron went to Baylor, and I think it was a spring break, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Jade's sophomore year, Jade's freshman year, Cam's
sophomore year. That's right. And it was time to pick the kids up for spring break and bring them home. And Cameron said, Mom, Dad, you got it. Can we go to my friend Jade's room, because her parents are going to be here, and they're just so godly, and you all love them. And I'm like, Cameron, come on, I'm trying to get back home. No, Dad, you got to go meet the Moffetts. You got to go meet the Moffetts. And so we packed him up for spring break, went over to Jay's room, and that's where we met, you and Herbert. And it's been, a blessing ever since. And I think the next break, we were on you guys' Periscope.
Well, before that, y'all invited us over for Thanksgiving. So we came to your house Thanksgiving that year. And the first time the four of us prayed together, the Lord moved. And I just remember tears everywhere and a whole lot of divine connection, because they don't always come that easy. But Cam was right. He was right. Because what we received from Jay was, Cam said y'all should meet them because y'all are the same. And we have found that to be so true.
So true. And then when you guys came, we got to know each other, we heard about like mission work that you guys are doing. So that was fascinating to me. So can you talk about, the mission work? How did that come about? Maybe some of the
Well, in 2005, I was called into ministry. You may or may not know, Herb and I eloped in 1997 at Baylor, our senior year. And then at some point he went into the Air Force. And so in 2005, we were in Arizona, and in prayer, and I knew it, because you can almost kind of feel when God is coming for you. And so I knew it, but in 2005, I started hearing in prayer, full-time ministry, and, instructions to quit my job, instructions to quit my business. And I was walking out of prayer like I didn't hear any of that, just. And then I decided, after 2 months of just openly rebelling, I could at least take the step and ask Herb about it. And so I said, hey, I've been hearing this stuff in prayer. What do you think? And he said, absolutely, Nisha. Who doesn't know you're supposed to be doing that? You've been praying since kindergarten. And, but like we were talking before the show, I was so afraid of starving out. I was still in that season where I was running from being poor. So I just couldn't understand that God would want me to, first of all, that he wanted me, because I was from a family of Baptist pastors. Women were not called. And so this was scary and challenging, and it was going to require that I stand against my family in a way that I just didn't want to do. And so most of my uncles were totally against it. But then I had the one uncle, and he said, yeah, baby, you should do what God told you to do. And so in that same season, the Lord started talking to Herb and I, and us out as generals in his army to a foreign land. And he was in the military at the time. And so a lot of miraculous things happened real quick. And in 2 months, we were landing in Germany. And so we spent the next 4.5 years in Germany. And then we spent a year in France. And over that time, we traveled all across Europe, ministering and doing a lot of warfare, raising up a lot of families, and really connecting the body of Christ in a new way. Part of what we're seeing now in this new era, an era of authenticity, where it's really not about your title and how big your church is, but are you known by your love? Are you making disciples? And can people eat off the message your life is preaching? And so we were first doing that in Europe, praying, training, discipling, and then doing these just amazing feats in the Lord. I just remember we were in France, and things had fallen apart, and we were very concerned. And instead of talking to us about our provision, the Lord said, hey, there's a river I need you to go pray over. Okay, and Herb, your friend, well, hey, what about this food and this money? And I was like, well, let's just obey first, and then God will take care of it. And so we did. And this river had been dry in the south of France. It was kind of like our San Antonio River. It had been dry for a decade. We knew personal pastors in France who had taken teams to pray over it, because they had told us about it. And one particular pastor, the pastor in his church that sponsored us in, he had mentioned it to us. But when we arrived, the church split. I'm talking about the day we arrived, the church split. Wow. So we were alone, and the Lord was saying, go pray over this river. And so we did. And while we were there, standing in the empty bank, water started coming from everywhere. Really? They could not find the source of the river, but it was from behind this rock. So water started coming from everywhere, Chauncey. This thing hit the news in France. And we were technically homeless and without hope in the same period, because since the church split, the place we were supposed to stay, it fell apart. But all in the midst of all of God's miracles, he also provided for us. Our European missionary time was like that from the beginning to the end. And the thing I think most amazing about it now is that our children were with us. So they were able to see God move in these miraculous ways and bring him outside of the word. So that the question of, is God real, never has to be asked. Now, will I submit? Everybody has to go through their own journey. Right. But like me, I don't know that they can say that God isn't real, because they've seen him work, and they've seen him love and redeem and restore. We've seen people with AIDS be healed. It's just been amazing. The thing that I think I've gained the most from all of that, some people think that should be strength, but it is true compassion. Okay. Because you're crushed for the miracles, right? Crushed for the glory. And that part's not often talked about, in our American Christian sentiment, where God is good and he's blessing all the time. Yes, he is. but some of these things are costing us for the greater good. And I think that that part was really good for Herb and I to come back here with that understanding.
Yeah. Wow. And that was in what year you said that was? 2000?
We arrived there in 2005. We came back here in 2009.
Wow. And so after that, you get back, you've had this amazing experience in Europe. What happens next for ministry?
Well, our kids were being homeschooled through most of that. And so the first thing that happened is we started trying to live like a normal life. And the Lord led us to put them back in school, which was scary because if you've ever homeschooled and have to put them back in school, you wonder if you did a good job. And I think we did okay. They both left home and they went to college and you know, they're standing on their own 2 feet. And then I was sitting at home and I was like, well, what do I do? Because nobody's hiring prophets. I mean, nobody's looking for prayer warriors, Lord. So
that doesn't go well on a resume, huh?
No. And, you know, and I hadn't had like a regular job. And so Herb went back to his field, which was computers and technology, which wasn't a problem. And I sat in my house and prayed and just said, Lord, what do I do? And I heard this word in my spirit, life coach. I didn't know what that was. I hadn't researched. I hadn't heard about it. I didn't know any life coaches. I didn't even necessarily know that it was real. I thought it could have been the pizza I had or whatever. Okay. So I Googled it and found out that it was real. And so I spent the next decade coaching leaders in transition, people who are going through a crisis in their life, who also are the go-to person in their circle, who have a hard time finding the space to deal with their own life and the challenges that come about. And you know, from being a leader yourself, it's very easy to just keep working and not deal with your mess. And so leaders hire me to help them carve out time to actually get into it and get a strategy and get the wisdom to navigate through it, and to keep them in remembrance that it is a season, it will pass. Because sometimes that's hard. But yesterday, I shut down my life coaching practice. It's so interesting you've been bringing this up. Yeah, I knew it was coming because the ministry has been getting more and more busy. And so I was holding on with dear life because that's where my personal funds come from. But it's time. I don't even have the bandwidth anymore. And so it was a blessing for the season that I was able to do that. Yeah. And like I told you earlier, I'm grateful I have a good husband, so I'm not going to starve out.
Right. He's all right. But one of the things I like that I've heard you say, you know, even from kindergarten all the way through, you know, through Europe and life coaching, homeschooling, and sending them back to school, is always listening to what the Lord has to say and not making just a random decision. And I've also heard spending a lot of time in prayer. And I'm reiterating this again for someone who may be watching this and they're wondering, you know, what's my next move? You know, is my next move, you know, like you said, Herbert would say, well, you know, what about these bills? You know, but you know, Lord, what should I be doing? And it sounds like, you know, what you're saying, hey, a lot of prayer, even in as a youth, you know, face down, praying with the adults and listening to the Lord. And no matter what the circumstances look like physically in front of you, you're still wanting to do what the Lord is calling you to do, even as late as you said yesterday, you know, having to.
It was painful, but it was time. And you're right. I said earlier, I was called in 2005, and that was a mistake. I was called in 2003. And that's important because the first 2 years where I was officially in ministry, I did nothing but pray and homeschool my kids and cook dinner for Herb. And it was so frustrating because I thought, Lord, I love my job for this. I'm just telling y'all the truth. I wish I was more holy so I could say I had these holy thoughts, but I didn't. I was so frustrated. And I'm so grateful now because I can look back and see what God was doing. Because that's all he led me to do. I didn't teach any classes. I wasn't counseling anybody. Nobody was calling me. And all I was doing was spending many, many, many hours in prayer every single day. And so it has, through following God in this way, he's fine-tuned my ears and my heart to hear what he's after and to know what's pleasing to him. That is my heart's cry every day. Lord, what is pleasing to you? And what is God saying? And people who we disciple, they use that as a tagline. Well, Kennisha always says, what does God say? What is God saying?
Hey, not what's Kennisha saying, not
No, what is
what
God
God's saying.
saying? You know, and this is for the Bible scholar too, because it was never meant to be done without the Lord. It's a relationship with him. You know, and so it is so important that we listen. But he taught me how to listen. I wouldn't have said I was a good listener before then.
Sure. So now we're kind of moving into the mid 2000s, later 2000s, and next thing you know, you writing books, all of that. So if you could tell us a little bit about some of the things you've written, because author is one of the titles under your name.
Amen. I have written 4 books, and I think you have one of them there. And then 2 prayer books. This one is Becoming One Daily, 50 Days of Personal Prayer for individuals, singles, I will say. And then there's a blue one that I don't actually have on hand for couples. This 50-day book and this one, I can't keep them. They sell and they do very, very well because it's 50 days. And I wouldn't even say intense, but it's the power of the consistency and the surrender and the type of prayers they are, because they help you to let go so that God really can come in and influence your life in the way he wants to. And then the one you have is the Dying to Become One. It's my very first book. It was released in 2013. That is actually Herb and I hands on the cover.
Okay. All right.
I know. And then a few years later, we had such great impact with that book that couples started saying they wanted an expansive version. So we created the workbook. Nice. And so now Herb is getting ready to marry another couple, and we usually take them through this particular book because it has them dig into their past and share those things. Because sometimes we get married and we don't know the first thing about each other. And those things are going to be detrimental because they are going to bring in issues that you haven't been able to prepare for. And so it gives them an opportunity to get prepared. I'm currently working on a parenting book. And I don't even want to get into all them details today.
So there's more to come is what you're saying.
It is coming. It is coming. I've been working on it for a few years, but just recently I feel so strongly to go ahead and publish it. And so I'm finalizing it. And it's called Lord, Teach Me to Raise My Kids. Nice.
Well, we will definitely be on the lookout. And, I expect to get my copy, and I expect it to be signed just like this one I had.
I'm surprised that was not signed, but yeah.
No, it is. That's what I'm saying. It is. I expect it to be signed like this one.
We'll get you and Takia a copy.
Okay. All right. Y'all heard it. She promised a copy. Free copy, right? No,
free copy. Free copy.
Now I know you and Herb have a ministry still called Restoring God's Family. I want to talk about that, or hear about that, and also this camp thing you guys.
Oh yeah, Warriors Training.
Warriors Training. So, well, this really quick, is Warriors Training kind of an offshoot of Restoring God's Family, or is that something totally separate?
It sits under the umbrella of Restoring God's Family.
Okay.
Warriors Training was actually birthed in my heart when we were missionaries. And we were in France, and it was another one of those really tough times. We had run out of food, and you run out of gas. And the heathens that we had been hiking with and ministering to noticed that our car hadn't moved and came over and blessed us. And so it was phenomenal. But during that time, Herb and I were spending a lot of time in prayer, as you can imagine. And there was one day I had an open vision of a school, and we're superhero fans. So in the vision, it looked like Professor X's Xavier School of the Mutants. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
and so we watch a lot of those. So I was walking through X-Men school, and I was looking in all the classrooms, and there were people teaching the word, but there were also people practicing their gifts. There were also people learning how to pray, not teaching how to talk in tongues, that's foolishness, but understanding that there are different types of prayers, and there's a way we approach God. And so all of these classrooms were full of spiritual teachings, and I was really excited, and I saw that, and I said, Lord, what is that? And he told me it was a supernatural school. And so Warriors Training started last year. We had our very first year, graduated in October. And what it is a 4-year-long discipleship program. And I know for many of you, you're thinking 4 years, oh my God, but it goes really fast. And if you're okay with that, I'm going to share my screen.
Please do. Yes.
So the first year is all about self-mastery. This is where we learn our gifts, our identity, what God means when he calls us prayer warriors. We develop a spiritual community, which is life-giving. And then overall, what happens in year one is believers learn to walk disciplined in a way that is very difficult for the average church, the way the average church is set up, to teach the average believer how to discipline their life to be effective in God's hands. Then year two is all about bringing out those leadership skills. So Jesus is our case study all the way through year two. Year three, we haven't done yet, but year three is focused on ministry development. How do I actually do that? When Herb and I were starting our ministry, many people said, hey, use this system. But of course, God had taught us to pray and bring things out from prayer, which meant that it seemed like we were going the long, hard route. But that's better, because the word says whoever would, except God builds a house, the builder builds in vain. So we didn't want to fall into that group. And then the last year is mentorship in your practicum. And this is where we help bridge the gap between what I do at church and at home into my community, so that we can actually begin to disciple our cities, which is something that Herb and I have been very much a part of since we've been living in Austin the last 10 years. I pray for pastors with other prophetic people. Herb is driving part of the pastors community. We get together every 3 months and do life together. It's not just events. And so that piece is vitally important, because that piece is how we change the culture. And I know that might bring out some debate, but we are supposed to be impacting culture. Wherever light is, there should be change. And sometimes we don't do that because we don't know how to do it. Or we've been taught, I need to take my Bible and just beat my boss with it every day. And that's not the way either.
That ain't gonna work all the time.
No, that's not gonna work. So Warriors Training is an amazing program because it breaks down all of these things. I'm gonna show you this. It breaks down. This is our year one, lesson one. And year one shows the 12 lessons that we'll go through: the warrior, the weapons, the order of God, ongoing training, the real battle, the mental battle, the governmental battle, which is what Herb and I learned when we were missionaries. There's a governmental warfare that God is doing at all times, and the average believer may not be a part of it. Navigating darkness, painful seasons, the keys to the mysteries of God, our true power, which is love, and judging battle outcomes. So all year long, there's a community that we meet and band. We have an emergency prayer group text. I say that because it's used for beyond emergencies now because the community is thriving. We have couples this year, which is very exciting for Herb and I. And then we do ecclesias, smaller groups. So there's a group of married people, a group of single people, a group of men who are meeting for the sole purpose of doing life together. So they're not just talking online, but they talk offline too. And so it's a very layered program, but it is a full expression of Herb and I's heart toward people, because it combines what God has taught us as missionaries with what he taught us with ministry, and put the two together. And oftentimes that's hard to do because missionaries are crazy. I mean, we're just all over, we're just doing stuff that regular people don't want to do. But this allows us to bring what we learned as missionaries into the fold. So it has been phenomenal. It's part of the reason why I had to shut down my business too, because I'm part of this thriving community.
But that sounds amazing too. And the way to see it laid out, year 1, 2, 3, and 4. So far, what are some of the kind of success stories, if you will, that you could share for people who've gone through, what you've done so far?
I think I want to highlight the community piece, because it's a huge selling point, if you will. Not selling for people to register, but I know that a lot of people share Warriors Training because of the community that it provides. And it's not just a community of people who want to hang out together. Everyone is gifted. And in the first several months, they're taught to share their gifts. So this community is sharing their gifts. So last year, when we first started the group text for emergency prayer, we have a lady who's in New Jersey who has an autistic son who's 16, who's nonverbal, and who is pretty much dependent on his parents. And so one day he was with the babysitter, and the babysitter lost track of him.
Oh, no.
And so she texted the group And then everyone began to pray. And they normally respond that they're praying, but some people also share prophecy. Some people share what the Lord revealed in visions. So people started sharing what they were receiving and letting her know that God was with him. And if I'm not mistaken, 33 minutes later, her son, who's nonverbal, who's not independent, walked himself home, crossing freeways and streets and neighborhoods. And she found him in the front yard.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I could go on and on and on about people who've been healed, people who had mysterious issues going on that the Lord revealed it. So it is dynamic. The people who went through the first year return for the second year, unless God was sending them into their own ministries.
I bet. Wow. Well, we're going to, tease that out to the end of the webinar as to where they can get more information and, if they want to sign up and how they can get your books and all of that. Because, man, I've been blessed. I knew a lot of what you shared, but not to this level of detail. And I pray everyone who's watching this is just as blessed as I am. And to kind of shift gears slightly in terms of the actual work that you have done along with your husband, obviously the Bible is a huge part of everything that you do and we do as believers, and having to dig into God's word. And so, obviously you're not doing this just, willy-nilly, you're listening to the Spirit and all that. But when it comes to actually getting into the word, how does Kennisha Moffett get into the word? What's like the daily routine like? What's your study like? Can you watch? For some, again, maybe listening, like I don't have a routine. I love what I'm hearing for Kennisha, and I would love to maybe emulate, what your routine may be, is what they may be saying.
I do have a routine, praise God. This year it's been impacted because the year 2 warriors are doing the Bible in a year. And so I've joined them in that. So my day starts with me listening to my audio Bible and brushing my teeth.
There you go.
And so right now we are in Job. Well, I'm in Job. I think I'm actually a little ahead of people because I love the Bible and I love audio Bibles. And so I'm a few books ahead of where everyone else is. I do that. And then I go right into spending several hours with God.
Every day?
Every day.
Wow.
So I get up pretty early. And then I schedule my day to do this. And so I don't normally have a first meeting before 10 o'clock. So I can do that. Me and God have this routine down that if I miss this time with him, I'm not as pleasant.
You hear her, make sure she get that time in.
And so I spend time with the Lord every morning, and then I begin to study.
Okay.
And so what I actually do when I'm consider study, depending on what I'm teaching that week.
Okay.
And so my private study is the daily Bible, but then I'm preparing for Prophet's Corner Warriors training most weeks. And so I'm trying to hear from the Lord about what's on his heart to share that week. And then I get into studying that. If it's an off week where I'm not having to teach, I get to study whatever I want to. I'm an avid book reader. So I have about 5 books I'm reading right now, 3 of them on audiobook version, so I can take them to the gym with me. And so I'm not one of those people that gets a lot of like regular TV time because I spend a lot of time with Christian content throughout the day. And if there's a space in my day, I'm normally trying to plug in one of the teachers that I love because it just helps me to stay saturated in the presence of God. Since my job primarily is giving wisdom to other people, I have found that I'm just, the prime is pumped when I've spent enough time with God. When I'm doing my study though, in that part, preparing for Warriors training or the teaching, I normally use logos.
Plug.
Yeah, bringing logos up makes me a little nervous because full disclosure, Chauncey is our teacher, and I am a slow student. He's been teaching me for years, but I absolutely love the fact book. So I usually use logos on my phone and on my tablet. But it's the same thing. I go to fact book, and like, for example, I brought up fact book here and I've been searching warriors. And fact book is great because it's going to give you key passages, and it kind of helps me understand the full spectrum of what the word is saying, just from the fact book starting. And then fact book always has these amazing sermons. A lot of times it is Charles Spurgeon, or maybe that's just what I'm searching. And then it gives me opportunities to learn it in a fresh way for myself. And I usually do go through those, but then I use these two books just about all the time. And I'm sure there's other ones, but I'm so stuck on these. And this one,
the Baker Encyclopedia looks like.
Yes. And that's one of the things I do love about Logos is it has so many resources that if I do run into a wall, I can normally get beyond it, because Logos is going to offer me something else. And then I use the ISBE. And they help me really get a firm understanding of what God is saying. And then really getting an understanding of from what perspective God wants me to teach it or understand it, because sometimes I'm in here not necessarily to preach, but because something's going on in my life and I'm trying to get a biblical perspective on it, right? And so I'll use Logos for that too. And the fact book is great for that.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about the fact book is the media, because for our broadcast, I normally have to build my own slides. And so Logos normally gives me some form of media that I hadn't even considered, like these right here.
Wow.
And then I like it because as I'm studying, I can highlight things. And then when I have to take a break and come back, I can see where I left off or re-emphasize something that I was focusing on a few hours later.
And let me point out too, the highlighting piece, because you said you primarily use it on your phone. And that, as you know, if you highlight something on your laptop and then go to your phone, that same highlight follows you, and because everything syncs together. And you never, like you said, you never lose your place. You don't have to start all over again. So I really like
it's just great. It's so robust because I am an intense researcher. I love it. And I can get lost in the weeds studying something, and then I'm on a side street, because that's the amazing part about the word. It's alive. And as I grow, things pop out different, as you understand. Yeah. So Logos is the gift that keeps on giving, because I have not been able to max it out. And I guess when I get there, I have to upgrade our plan, but it's really helpful.
No, nobody has maxed it out. Trust me. As you know, I travel all over the country and speaking at conferences, and I hear that everywhere I go. It's like I feel like I only use just a little bit of it because it's just so much to it.
Yeah.
And, I think it's safe to say that no one will probably ever master it per se. It just keeps, growing. And let me
I want them to do a Zoom option, because if they could zoom out, I could use it on our broadcast. But that's the only problem is I haven't been able to find a way to zoom in.
Oh, you mean to make it bigger?
Like if I'm broadcasting, yeah, you can help me with that.
We can do that. I got you. We can do that. We can make it as big as you need to. But I do want to take this opportunity to just point out that because the audience has joined in today, we are offering Logos at a discount. And you can go to logos.com/ wait for it, Moffett, 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 logos.com/Moffett. There's a coupon code there. I think it's Moffett 0422 if I'm not mistaken, but it'll be on the website. So go there, get your 15% discount. So enough infomercial. So back to
what website did you say it would be at?
Logos.com/Moffett, Moffett.
Okay, got it.
There you go. Yeah, so tell everybody, tell your friends, tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your cousin, everybody go to logos.com. You can use the same type of fact book. And fact book is one of my favorite features as well. We, when I travel and show Logos on stage, we jokingly say that fact book is kind of like Christian Google. We don't want people going to Google for their Christian information. Go to Google to get some information about some things, but as far as your theological study, you want resources that you can trust, where where the information is coming from as a trusted source, and that's through Faith Life. So, but hey, so with that, a couple more things, and I'll let you go because you busy. You have some busy days. If they wanted to get your books, or if they wanted more information about the Warriors program, where would they go?
They could go to our website, and I can pull that up for you.
Please.
They could go to our website. You there? What is this?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. So our website is rgfnetwork.com. And you could go here to find out more about the Warriors Training Program, everything you need, how to apply, the tuition, should you apply? Because if you're opposed to following and instruction, you probably
not the one for you, huh?
because it's a real school. And so
Okay.
we have real tests, real expectations. It takes about the commitment is 15 hours a month.
Okay.
About 15 hours. That includes all the classes, that includes the gatherings, that includes the monthly teaching Herb and I provide, and it includes the time necessary to do the homework that's laid out, 15 hours. And so should you apply? That's the first question. Is this a season? So we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of mothers with super young children because they don't really have the time. And but
so does that take you through like a questionnaire that should you apply thing? Is that like a questionnaire, and if you, depending on how you answer those, that'll help you determine if you should? Is that how it works? Or
it is not that fancy, but that's a great idea. That is a great idea. No, it just basically tells you what the expectation is and allows you to decide if this is a good season for it.
Gotcha. Now, can they get your books from that same site? So
they sure can.
That's RG at Restoring God's Family Network.com, right?
Yep, rgfnetwork.com, and all of the books are here.
Okay, right. Oh, could you go? I did have a question. I'm glad you showed it. So the red book, you mentioned that was for singles. Is that women specifically or any single?
Any singles. We have men that are using it. Our son, as a matter of fact, this is one of his books that he keeps. And you know, that's a big deal because your kids don't normally promote you, but they love you. They just don't know how awesome you are.
That's funny. Trey, we love you, Trey. We love you, Trey Moffett. And the marriage book, man, so it's the springtime, summertime, people getting married, they can go order the book, be a good wedding gift, I assume.
Yep. And then the 2 marriage books. This first one is primarily Herb and I's testimony. Many people don't know that we eloped because we had a wedding that was crashed and destroyed. There's a whole story. There's a whole story. Oh, yeah. And I put it all in the book because so many people, and this is a blessing. I'm so grateful that I saw one of your questions that said, my perfect vacation, where would it be? And if you had asked me that, I was going to say anywhere with Herb.
Oh, nice.
And so the book explains why I can say that, because of the things that he and I went through with the help of God to build a marriage that after 25 years, woo, we still really enjoy being together and supporting and affirming each other.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Mrs. Moffett, it's been a pleasure having you on. I've been looking forward to this, a couple of months now?
Me too. I could not believe it.
It's been so much fun. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for pouring your heart out. Thank you for listening to the Lord. It's one thing to listen and then do what he tells you to do. And it sounds like that's what you do in terms of marriage and parenting and helping other couples out. And you provided that, and you continue to provide that. And we thank God for you for all that you do, and look forward to the upcoming book when that comes out.
And if I could add any final words for other people, it would just be if there was any time to jump into the fire of wrestling to hear from the Lord clearly, it's now. Chaos and contention and division and witchcraft is rising so high in the land that we need to be discerning. And that step of discerning is very difficult, if not impossible, without 2 things: knowing the word of God, not perfectly, but understanding, and then knowing his voice. What is he saying to me today for my life, so that as I'm navigating these things, I can avoid the deception that is so great in this hour. Even in churches, there are some churches we need to be able to see and know and understand, so we don't connect. And you and I and Herb and Takia have talked about that at length. This is the hour, and our safety is in the wrestling that has to be done to really hear from God. And some people don't do that because it costs you something. Like I said, those 2 hours, I was mad most days. So I was like, what are we doing? But I'm so glad that he taught me how to yield myself to that process, because now it's more important that I hear from God than ever before. And I feel that that's true for all of us.
Yeah. That's an amazing closing word. And just to go one final little thing that has nothing to do with the word, has nothing to do with the Bible, but I'm gonna put you on the spot. Baylor graduate, and you got your little thing. Can you give us the thing one time? How you do it? There you go. All right.
Yay, second base. And I'm on the board there now, right?
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I know.
That's so crazy what God is doing to my life.
Crazy. So, hey, we started with the word, we closed with the Baylor Bear. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, So, Kennisha, thank you. Tell my man Herbert I said hello. He'll probably call me as soon as this is over. That's fine. But thank you again, and we look forward to maybe having you. We will have you on again if you want to.
I would love that. And I would be looking for the site that you were telling me about earlier, where it's going to be a dedicated site for this. That's going to be exciting.
Yes. So
Thank
stay
you
tuned.
so much for what you're doing, Chauncey. It means the world to have an advocate.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your friendship as well.
Absolutely. We love y'all. Give my sister a hug.
I will. All right. Take care. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.